Japan is an island country in East Asia. It is situated in the northwest Pacific Ocean, and is bordered on the west by the Sea of Japan, while extending from the Sea of Okhotsk in the north toward the East China Sea and Taiwan in the south. Japan is a part of the Ring of Fire, and spans an archipelago of 6,852 islands covering 377,975 square kilometers, 145,937 square miles. The five main islands are Hokkaido, Honshu, the mainland, Shikoku, Kyushu, and Okinawa. Tokyo is the nation's capital and largest city. Other major cities include Yokohama, Osaka, Nagoya, Sapporo, Fukuoka, Kobe, and Kyoto. Japan is the 11th most populous country in the world, as well as one of the most densely populated and urbanized. About 3/4 of the country's terrain is mountainous, concentrating its population of 125.5 million on narrow coastal plains. Japan is divided into 47 administrative prefectures and 8 traditional regions. The Greater Tokyo area is the most populous metropolitan area in the world, with more than 37.4 million residents. Japan has been inhabited since the Upper Paleolithic period, 30,000 BC, though the first written mention of the archipelago appears in a Chinese chronicle, the Book of Han, finished in the 2nd century AD. Between the 4th and 9th centuries, the kingdoms of Japan became unified under an emperor and the imperial court based in Heian-kyo. Beginning in the 12th century, political power was held by a series of military dictators, shogun, and feudal lords, daimyo, and enforced by a class of warrior nobility, samurai. After a century-long period of civil war, the country was reunified in 1603 under the Tokugawa shogunate, which enacted an isolationist foreign policy. In 1854, a United States fleet forced Japan to open trade to the west, which led to the end of the shogunate and the restoration of imperial power in 1868. In the Meiji period, the Empire of Japan adopted a Western-modeled constitution and pursued a program of industrialization and modernization. Amidst a rise in militarism and overseas colonization, Japan invaded China in 1937 and entered World War II as an Axis power in 1941. After suffering defeat in the Pacific War and 2 atomic bombings, Japan surrendered in 1945 and came under a 7-year Allied occupation, during which it adopted a new constitution and began a military alliance with the United States. Under the 1947 Constitution, Japan has maintained a unitary parliamentary constitutional monarchy with a bicameral legislature, the National Diet. Japan is a great power and a member of numerous international organizations, including the United Nations, since 1956, OECD, G20 and Group of Seven. Although it has renounced its right to declare war, the country maintains self-defense forces that rank as one of the world's strongest militaries. After World War II, Japan experienced record growth in an economic miracle, becoming the second largest economy in the world by 1972 but has stagnated since 1995 in what is referred to as the lost decades. As of 2021, the country's economy is the third largest by nominal GDP and the fourth largest by PPP. Ranked very high on the Human Development Index, Japan has one of the world's highest life expectancies, though it is experiencing a decline in population. A global leader in the automotive, robotics and electronics industries, Japan has made significant contributions to science and technology. The culture of Japan is well known around the world, including its art, cuisine, music, and popular culture, which encompasses prominent comic, animation and video game industry. War crimes were committed by the Empire of Japan in many Asian Pacific countries during the period of Japanese imperialism, primarily during the Second Sino-Japanese and Pacific Wars. These incidents have been described as an Asian Holocaust. 1. 2. Some war crimes were committed by Japanese military personnel during the late 19th century, but most of them were committed during the first part of the Showa era, the name which was given to the reign of Emperor Hirohito. Under Emperor Hirohito, the Imperial Japanese Army, IJA, and the Imperial Japanese Navy, IJN, perpetrated numerous war crimes which resulted in the deaths of millions of people. Some historical estimates of the number of deaths which resulted from Japanese war crimes range from 3 to 14.4 million through massacre, human experimentation, starvation, and forced labor that was either directly perpetrated or condoned by the Japanese military and government. Some Japanese soldiers have admitted to committing these crimes. Airmen of the Imperial Japanese Army Air Service and Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service were not included as war criminals because there was no positive or specific customary international humanitarian law that prohibited the unlawful conduct of aerial warfare either before or during World War II. The Imperial Japanese Army Air Service took part in conducting chemical and biological attacks on enemy nationals during the Second Sino-Japanese War and World War II, and the use of such weapons in warfare were generally prohibited by international agreements which were previously signed by Japan, including the Hague Conventions, 1899 and 1907, which banned the use of poison or poisoned weapons in warfare. Since the 1950s, senior Japanese government officials have issued numerous apologies for the country's war crimes. Japan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs states that the country acknowledges its role in causing tremendous damage and suffering during World War II, especially in regard to the IJA entrance into Nanjing, during which Japanese soldiers killed a large number of non-combatants and engaged in looting and rape. That being said, some members of the Liberal Democratic Party in the Japanese government, such as former Prime Ministers Junichiro Koizumi and Shinzo Abe, have prayed at the Yasukuni Shrine, which has been the subject of controversy, as the shrine honors all Japanese who died during the war, including convicted class of war criminals. Some Japanese history textbooks only offer brief references to the various war crimes, and members of the Liberal Democratic Party have denied some of the atrocities, such as government involvement in abducting women to serve as comfort women, a